Finding out I was dying wasn't the hardest part. It was knowing that the woman I loved was already betraying me. And I wasn't sure what hurt more, her affair, or the fact that I trusted the man she was sleeping with. It's strange how life can break you down piece by piece and then build you back up, just to do it all over again. At 30, I thought I had already endured the worst life could throw at me. I was a widower with 3 young kids. My wife and I had planned a lifetime together, but fate had other ideas. One day, she was there, vibrant and full of life, and the next, gone. There I was, holding the weight of their innocent, terrified faces in my hands, trying to stay strong while my world was crumbling. For years, I poured everything I had into raising them. I became both mother and father, protector and provider. The long nights and endless sacrifices molded me into someone I barely recognized. But I survived. We survived. Still, the loneliness lingered like a shadow in the background, a constant reminder of what I had lost. Then she appeared. Angela. She wasn't just beautiful, though God knows she was, but she had a warmth that melted through the icy walls I'd built around myself. She laughed at my terrible jokes, brought out a version of me I thought had died with my first wife. The kids were cautious at first, understandably so, but Angela was patient. She didn't try to force her way in. She earned their trust, bit by bit. Eventually, I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe I get to be happy again. We got married a couple of years later. I truly believed that a full, happy family was finally within reach. But life isn't a fairy tale. Our marriage had its highs and lows. Sometimes it felt like we were perfectly in sync, and other times it was like living with a stranger. Angela would withdraw, growing distant in ways that were hard to explain. I chalked it up to the natural ebb and flow of long-term relationships. After all, no marriage is perfect. As time passed, my children grew up. My oldest daughter left for college. My son started working full-time, and my youngest was preparing for her next step in life. I was proud of them. They'd turned out better than I could have hoped, considering everything we'd been through. But as the house grew quieter, I couldn't shake the feeling that Angela and I were drifting further apart. It wasn't long after that when my world shattered once more. The visit to the doctor was supposed to be routine, a follow-up after some unexplained fatigue and weight loss. I'd expected to hear that I needed more sleep or to cut down on stress. Instead, I got a diagnosis that sent my mind spinning. Terminal cancer. The doctor's voice became muffled under the weight of those words. It felt like the room was closing in on me. "How long do I have?" I asked quietly, my voice barely steady. "With treatment, maybe a year," the doctor replied. Compassion etched into his face. "A year? Maybe." I sat in my car for what felt like hours, staring blankly at the steering wheel. How was I supposed to tell my kids? Would they be able to handle it? And Angela? Could she even stand to stay by my side through this? A part of me feared she wouldn't. We weren't as close as we used to be, and I couldn't help but feel like she was already halfway out the door. Eventually, I made a decision. I wouldn't tell anyone. Not yet. I wanted to get my affairs in order first, make sure my kids were taken care of, and that the business I had built with my best friend and partner, Marcus, would survive after I was gone. I thought I had control over the situation. But life had other plans. At first, it was little things. Angela coming home late more often than usual, saying she was stuck in meetings or helping a friend. Sometimes she would be glued to her phone, smiling at messages she quickly hid when I entered the room. I didn't think much of it at first. Everyone has private conversations. I told myself not to be paranoid, that she was just busy, but a nagging doubt began to grow inside me. Then, one night, I caught a glimpse of something that made my blood run cold. Angela's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while she was in the other room. I glanced down and saw a message from Marcus, my business partner. "Let's meet tonight. Can't wait to see you." At first, I convinced myself there had to be some innocent explanation. They knew each other well, after all. Maybe it was about work. But deep down, I knew better. There was a flirtatious edge to those words that I couldn't ignore. I felt sick to my stomach. From that moment on, I couldn't look at either of them the same way. I began to watch her more closely. The next day, she left the house, claiming she had a late meeting. I decided to follow her. Heart pounding, I tailed her car from a distance, praying I was wrong. But I wasn't. She drove across town and pulled into the parking lot of a hotel. A few minutes later, Marcus arrived. I watched as they embraced like lovers. My mind went blank. Everything inside me screamed to storm in there, to confront them on the spot. But I held back. No, I wasn't going to blow up in anger. I needed to be smart. I needed to think this through. I stayed in the car, shaking with rage and betrayal. The man I had trusted like a brother. The woman I had married to rebuild my broken family. They were both stabbing me in the back. I clenched my jaw and stared at the hotel entrance. I knew what I had to do. She wouldn't see it coming. Ride home from the hotel that night was suffocating. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so hard they ached. The betrayal played on a loop in my head, the embrace, the look on her face, the easy familiarity between them. How long had it been going on? Did it start recently, or had I been blind to this for years? The questions burned through me, but one thing was clear. I needed proof. Proof that would ensure she couldn't deny it when the time came. The next day, I bought a GPS tracker and discreetly attached it to her car. Every evening, I checked her location history. Sure enough, the trips to the hotel weren't isolated incidents. She met him there regularly, sometimes during the day, other times late at night under the guise of work. Each time I checked, a fresh wave of nausea hit me, but I forced myself to push through. I wasn't done yet. I needed more. I hid. A small audio recorder in her car, positioned to capture any conversations she had while driving. Days passed, and I listened to hours of mundane discussions, waiting for something significant. Then, late one night, I got what I was looking for. Her voice came through the speaker, soft but unmistakable. "I don't know how much longer I can do this. He's getting worse," Marcus replied, his voice filled with concern, "but not for me. Just hold on a little longer. Once he's gone, we'll have everything." Once he's gone. I had to pause the recording, my hands trembling so hard I couldn't press play again. They weren't just having an affair. They were waiting for me to die so they could pick apart the pieces of the life I had built. They had been planning this for years. Angela had never been fully committed to our marriage. She had been playing the long game, waiting for my exit so she could cash in. Marcus, the man I had built a business with from scratch, the man I had trusted like a brother, was ready to steal everything from me, including the last shred of dignity I had left. Spent that night alone in my office, staring at the wall as the weight of it all came crashing down. Memories of Marcus and I working late nights, building the company brick by brick, played in my mind like some cruel joke. We had celebrated successes together, shared failures, leaned on each other when times were tough. How had I been so blind? Thought back to the early signs I had ignored, how Angela would pull away from me at night, how Marcus started showing up at our house for reasons that seemed flimsy in retrospect. I had trusted them both with everything, and they had repaid me with betrayal. For hours I sat there, teetering between rage and despair. Part of me wanted to explode, to confront them, to scream until my voice gave out. But the rational part of me knew that I couldn't afford to act on impulse. I had to be smart. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting what little time I had left and ensuring that my kids wouldn't suffer because of their betrayal. The next morning, I made an appointment with my attorney. I didn't tell him everything, just enough for him to understand the urgency. I wanted to file for divorce and remove Angela from any access to my business or assets. I also wanted to update my will, transferring everything directly to my children. "It has to be airtight," I told him. "I don't want her contesting any of this after I'm gone." He nodded, sensing the seriousness in my tone. "I'll make sure of it, but you'll need to act as if nothing's changed until the paperwork is finalized." That was the hardest part, pretending. Every morning, I woke up next to her, biting my tongue as she kissed me goodbye, and walked out the full door, probably straight into Marcus's arms. I had to smile at family dinners, share inside jokes, and play the role of the loving husband, all while knowing the truth. Inside, I was dying faster than my diagnosis predicted. The holidays came faster than I expected, and with them the bittersweet reality that this would likely be my last Christmas. I insisted on having the whole family over, our children, Angela, even a few close relatives. The house was filled with laughter, the smell of baked ham and cinnamon filling the air. On the surface, it was perfect, but beneath it all, I felt like an outsider watching from a distance as life moved on without me. My kids, bless them, noticed that something was off. My youngest daughter pulled me aside at one point, her eyes filled with concern. "Dad, you've been looking really tired lately. Are you okay?" I smiled and patted her hand. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just the holiday stress." She didn't seem convinced, but she let it go. I knew they would find out the truth soon enough. Angela, on the other hand, was completely at ease. She laughed and chatted with the guests, played the perfect hostess, and even leaned on my shoulder during the family photos. If I didn't know any better, I would have believed the act. But I did know better. When the night ended, I stood by, the door, watching as everyone left. My son hugged me tightly and whispered, "Merry Christmas, Dad. I love you." I held on to him for a moment longer than usual. "I love you too, son." As Angela and I cleaned up the house, I wondered if she had any idea that her perfect little world was about to fall apart. Probably not. A few days after Christmas, my body finally began to betray me. I woke up drenched in sweat, my chest tight, and every breath felt like a battle. Angela called an ambulance, and I was admitted to the hospital that morning. The doctors ran tests and adjusted my medications, but we all knew what was happening. The end was coming faster than expected. Could feel it in my bones. Despite the pain, I pushed myself to finalize everything. My attorney visited me in the hospital, bringing the documents I needed to sign. I scrawled my signature on the divorce papers, the updated will, and the legal documents transferring control of the business to my children. It was all set, Angela. Had no idea. She sat by my bedside, holding my hand, probably thinking she was about to inherit everything. As the sun set outside my hospital window, I sent a message to my kids, asking them to come by the next morning. The time had come to tell them the truth, not just about my illness, but about the betrayal and the steps I had taken to protect them. Angela sat across the room, scrolling through her phone, oblivious to the storm about to hit. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. I'm ready to tell them everything, and when I do, she won't know what hit her. The hospital room was quiet, except for the faint beeping of the monitors next to my bed. Outside the window, the morning sun barely broke through the heavy clouds. My kids arrived one by one, their faces lighting up when they saw me sitting up, but the concern in their eyes betrayed their smiles. They knew something was wrong. I asked them to sit, and for a moment I just looked at them. My 3 reasons for living. My oldest daughter, Sarah, always so strong yet so gentle. My son, Ethan, the protector, already stepping into a leadership role I had barely given him time to grow into. And my youngest, Emily, whose heart was as big as the world. How could I have been so lucky to raise them? How could I leave them? But I had no choice. "I need you all to listen," I began, my voice softer than I intended. "There's something I haven't told you." Sarah was the first to react, leaning forward. "Dad, what is it?" I exhaled slowly, bracing myself. "I'm sick. Terminally sick." I watched as the words hit them like a punch to the gut. Ethan's jaw tightened. Sarah's eyes welled with tears, and Emily covered her mouth as she started to sob. "No," she whispered. "No, you can't." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm sorry. I didn't tell you because I wanted to make sure everything was taken care of first." My throat tightened, but I pushed through. "I didn't want you to worry, but now it's time you know the full truth." I told them everything, about my diagnosis, about Angela's affair, about how Marcus, the man I trusted, had been waiting in the wings to swoop in as soon as I was gone. The betrayal was written all over their faces: shock, anger, heartbreak. Ethan stood up, pacing the room, clenching and unclenching his fists. Sarah cried quietly, wiping away tears, while Emily buried her face in my chest, sobbing. "Dad," Ethan finally said, his voice shaking, "why didn't you tell us sooner? We could have helped you." "I know," I whispered. But this was something I had to handle, and I did. I explained the legal documents, the divorce papers, the transfer of assets. I made sure she can't touch anything. It's all yours now. The business, the house, it's all in your names. Sarah wiped her tears away and looked me in the eye. "We'll be okay, Dad. I promise." Ethan nodded, stepping closer. "We're not going to let her or Marcus get away with this." Emily, still clutching my hand, whispered, "We'll take care of each other, just like you always did for us." Angela arrived shortly after, breezing into the room with her usual practiced smile. But it faltered when she saw the kids' tear-streaked faces and the grim expression on mine. "What's going on?" she asked, her gaze darting between us. I didn't give her a chance to play dumb. Reaching under my blanket, I pulled out the divorce papers and handed them to her. "It's over, Angela. You've been served." She blinked, staring at the papers as if they were written in a foreign language. What?" Her voice cracked. "You're divorcing me? Here? Now?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I know about you and Marcus. I know how long it's been going on, and I know what you were planning." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I saw something raw and desperate flash across her face. Then came the anger. "You can't do this," she hissed. "You need me. You can barely stand on your own, and you think you can just cut me off like this?" I laughed bitterly. "I don't need you, Angela. I've already taken care of everything. The house, the business. They're all out of your reach now." Her face contorted with rage. "You don't get to do this to me. After everything I've done for you." I cut her off with a cold smile. "Oh, and one more thing. Tell Marcus. He's fired. Effective today." It was like a bomb went off inside her. She staggered back, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to process what I had just said. You can't do that," she stammered. "He's your business partner." "Not anymore," I said. "The kids have full control now. They'll make sure he's out of the picture for good." Her face drained of color. She had planned to ride off into the sunset with him, thinking she'd be set for life. But now, she was staring down a future with nothing. No husband, no house, no income. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. True to form, Angela didn't go down without a fight. Within days, she tried to contest the divorce, claiming that I was mentally unstable and incapable of making sound decisions. But my attorney had anticipated this. He presented evidence proving that I had been of sound mind when signing all the documents. Medical records, legal affidavits, and even a video statement I had recorded just in case this exact scenario played out. Her case was dismissed before it even gained traction. When the judge ruled against her, I saw the last shred of confidence drain from her face. She had lost. With Angela and Marcus out of the picture, I finally had time to focus on what truly mattered: my kids. They spent every day by my side, filling the room with stories, laughter, and warmth. I watched them interact, knowing that they would be okay without me. We had long conversations about the future. I gave them advice on running the business, managing the house, and most importantly, staying close to each other. "You're all you've got now," I told them. "Don't let anything come between you." They promised they wouldn't. One evening, as the sun set behind the hospital blinds, I lay in bed with Emily's hand in mine, Sarah reading quietly in the corner, and Ethan sitting by my side. The pain was still there, but it didn't feel as heavy anymore. I wasn't afraid. I had done what I needed to do. My kids were safe, and the people who had betrayed me had been stripped of their power. As my breathing slowed, I closed my eyes and let the memories of happier times wash over me. My first wife's laugh, the sound of my kids playing in the backyard, the smell of pancakes on a lazy Sunday morning, and then peace. I wasn't afraid anymore. I knew I had done what needed to be done, and as long as my kids were okay, I could let go.